the People Mover, a very extraordinary and very exclusive ride at Disneyland that has shut down for a very, very long time. But what do you know about the People Mover? The People Mover was, of course, an original idea made by Walt Disney and the Walt Disney Company as Tomorrowland was being built into the tomorrow. As we all know, the People Mover was a very interesting and a very enjoyable, slow-paced omni-mover attraction. So for those who don't know what the People Mover is, the People Mover is basically a omni-mover ride that was set in the middle of Disneyland. Of course, the attraction still sits there today, but it is currently still sitting there abandoned. The current version of the People Mover only sits at Walt Disney World and is still in operation to this day. But the People Mover, also sometimes referred because of its original sponsorship being with Goodyear, it was normally called the Goodyear People Mover. The original attraction for the People Mover that opened at Disneyland in Anaheim, California, opened on July 2nd, 1967 at the Disneyland Resort. This was a very, very amazing attraction back in the day, and this was a highly desirable ride for all guests of all ages to ride. Not only was it your way to just have the ability to sit down, relax as you were continuing to scroll through Disneyland, but also having the ability to explore some amazing things about the ride. Now, of course, when the original People Mover closed, it was suddenly changed to one of the worst rides to ever exist in Disney history, and a major failure in Disney history. An attraction likewise was called Rocket Rods. Of course, Rocket Rods was, of course, your replacement of the People Mover, but they called it a high-speed, electrical-powered ride. Now, when Walt Disney imagined the People Mover and wanted to make the ride come to life for his new Disneyland and his upcoming Tomorrowland, he wanted to make sure that Tomorrowland was prepared for the future. Of course, aside from a few other things that Walt Disney had planned for the upcoming Tomorrowland at his local resort and his brand new theme park, Tomorrowland had to be something of the future. And Walt Disney imagined something like this of the People Mover. Now, it's actually really crazy because his original idea of the People Mover came to thought for when Ford was starting to produce their very own Ford Mustangs. He went to a fair one day where Ford was testing out some amazing and brand new Ford Mustangs, and these vehicles were controlled by some sort of wheel that was under a laid out track. And these vehicles would just move by itself, and nobody had to steer anything. No buttons had to be pushed or nothing like that. It kind of had the similar design of a monorail, but it was actually an entire full automobile. Of course, the vehicle was made out of electricity and there was no gasoline. However, the cars were as realistic as possible. And this is where Walt Disney had his idea to go on ahead and create the People Mover for the upcoming Tomorrowland. Now, your original People Mover closed on August 21st, 1995, which surprisingly, it's only almost been 30 years since the attraction had closed, because although it has reached 2025, it's not that certain date just yet. But it is crazy to think that the People Mover closed almost 30 years ago, and the ride and the track itself is still sitting abandoned to this day. It's actually really crazy because I did take a trip to Disneyland here about a few months ago, and I did take a picture of the People Mover track sitting there abandoned in its current state. Now, I know this video is about why I want the People Mover and why I think it should return in general, and I know this sounds a little bit too much to be asking from Disney because, as we all know, the People Mover has been sitting abandoned for, like I said, almost 30 years. And those attracts itself are completely damaged beyond repair, and it would cost the company millions and millions and millions of dollars to repair the entire attraction. Now, of course, it is kind of interesting to note that the entire People Mover track does sit there in Tomorrowland as to this day. It's just sitting there with no use whatsoever, which is a very, very interesting part about the People Mover. And I think what kind of sucks more is that it's just in plain sight, and nothing is really happening to the entire track by itself or the station. Literally the entire station, the entire ride, all of it is just all sitting up there abandoned. And I don't really see the Walt Disney Company doing anything to bring back the People Mover, to be honest. They just really have it more there as a presentation of what was from the past. Now, I already know that the Rocket Mover was a major letdown of the People Mover after its replacement, and as you would expect as well, there were some pretty negative reviews about the original Rocket Rods. I mean, sure, Rocket Rods was a very entertaining ride at the same time. It was a nice thrill ride. However, just the fact that the ride got replaced by the Rocket Rods and the entire attraction got changed from a Omnimover attraction into a launch ride doesn't seem completely fair to the Disney guests who had the ability to ride the People Mover. And I think what kind of sucked more was that most of these people who had the ability to ride the People Mover just didn't really like the Rocket Rods. It didn't feel the same. It didn't feel right. It didn't feel like how it should have been a long time ago. Now, why exactly am I asking for the People Mover to return? Well, there's a few reasons why, and I can only name just two of them because I don't exactly have the memory or the knowledge to remember what other reasons were for why I think the People Mover should return. However, I think the two major factors of why the People Mover should return is because, I mean, it's unfair to think that we have a People Mover, just one People Mover, all the way located down in Florida, which, I mean, it's not exactly much of a huge deal or anything like that, but to me, it just doesn't feel like a very right thing, because the People Mover, the original People Mover from Disneyland in Anaheim, California, this was the original. This was the ride that brought the People Mover to life to Walt Disney World when it was being built. And I think it was just a little tad bit unfair for, the People Mover to shut down and get replaced by some old hunk of junk called the Rocket Rods. Now, of course, on my own end, I never had the ability to experience the People Mover, nor have I ever had the experience to ride the Rocket Rods. However, I do have family who had the ability to ride the original People Mover and the Rocket Rods back then, and they don't exactly have fond memories of the attraction, but all I remember is that the Rocket Rods was just a very huge letdown of the original People Mover attraction. And I think it would be nice that if we can have the People Mover return to Disneyland, even though I know that it's going to cost hundreds of millions of dollars, just to try to replace the ride and get it all fixed. Because, as I will say again, the People Mover at Disneyland is just sitting there abandoned. And there is really no point in, keeping the attraction there if it's just going to sit there abandoned. Like, I think what I like about it just sitting there, in my own opinion, is that it's just having the ability to see the ride and get a recognition of what the past was for Disneyland. No, I think just having the track sit there in the middle of Tomorrowland, like, sure, it can be in the way in some way, shape, or form, but I mean, at least there are some, perks about, having that abandoned track just sit there. Not only just being a sightseer, but also just to have it there just to, if it's raining or if there's like lightning or thunderstorms, you could just have to have the ability to just go under the tracks and just sit there for a while until, it starts cooling down a little bit. Like, I think that's like at least a good thing about having the ability of having the People Mover track just sit there. However, like I said, I just think that it would be nice to see the People Mover make a glorious return and make it return to its former glory of what it once was back then. Now, I know there's a lot of stuff that has to be done in that sort of section and trying to get, the People Mover to be fixed and stuff like that. But, I'm just hoping that in the future we do get to see what Walt Disney created to get brought back to life, aside from, a few other of his original creations, which I'm hoping to make discussions about later on in the future. It would be great to see Walt Disney's creations come back to life and have the ability to have us, as people who never had the ability to ride the original attractions, to have the ability to ride the People Mover once again and make the ride come back to life. And I think it would be really nice to see such an amazing and astonishing and nostalgic creation like the People Mover come back to Tomorrowland. Because, I mean, although they are, going with the time and trying to evolve with the People Mover, I just think it would be nice to see a comeback of that exact attraction. But here's the hopes that maybe we will be able to see the People Mover make a great return later on in the future. But to be fair with you guys, I don't really see it happening because of just how damaged and how really unrepairable the track is by itself. I mean, have you seen what the track looks like from high above? It's a rust bucket. It's absolutely damaged beyond repair. Like, there's no way that Disney would have the idea to spend so much money on the People Mover track just to get it running back up again. But I mean, who knows? I mean, we could possibly get the return of the People Mover later on in the future, but I'm just saying again, like, I just don't see it happening, because as much as I would love to see the People Mover return, and why I think it should return would be a really great thing, I just don't see it happening. The ride is just beyond repair, and it's just gonna sit there for as long as time comes. You know, I don't really see much of anything happening to the People Mover except for just allowing it to continue to sit there abandoned. And I know it's a great eyesore. It's a really great reflection of Disney's past when it came to Tomorrowland, from the People Mover to the Rocket Rods to now just sitting abandoned. But anyways, you guys, I thank you all so much for watching today's little podcast video. I know this video was as short as you probably didn't expect it to be, but I mean, we did get a good enough 10 plus minutes in or so. But I thank you all once again for watching today's video. Let me know in the comments below, would you like to see the People Mover come back, and what do you want Walt Disney to do with the People Mover? Just let me know in the comments below. I would love to hear you guys' comments and see your guys' opinions about the People Mover. And for those who did grow up with the People Mover, what was it like to be a part of that ride? Was it fun? Was it relaxing? Was it entertaining in some way, shape, or form? Was it nostalgic for you as a childhood thing? Just let me know in the comments below. But anyways, you guys, my name is SparkOfImagination. Thank you all so much again for watching today's video, and I will see you guys in the next video. Keep sparking with your imagination, and peace out, you guys.